All the roads are windy.
Welcome to the show, Katie. I'm thrilled to be here with you. Thank you for having me in your beautiful land, your sacred space that you stored and tend in your shop and your life. It's been a real pleasure today, so thank you.
Thank you. It's been a true pleasure for me. I mean, to have met in the shop and then be able to welcome you into this space. Also to share this land at this time of the year when the roses are blooming and the birds are calling, the grass is high and everything is green. It's a real treat.
It is truly springing to life
It
right
is.
now.
Yep.
Well, would you like to lead us in an invocation?
I'd love to. So this practice was passed down to me through Madalena Bullock, whose teacher Martine Proctel taught it to her. She's one of my teachers with the School of Traditional Healing Arts in San Francisco. And it begins usually, if you would like to bring this into your own practice, when you first get up in the morning and you've brushed your teeth and splashed some water on your face, maybe had a sip of water into your body. You step outside regardless of the weather, preferably barefoot. And you can say it in your mind because, of course, it's probably going to be a little bit early. You don't want to wake the people around you. Be, considerate of neighbors and partners and whatever else. But in my mind, it will sound a little more voluminous. And so I'll stand out and I'll say, "Hello to the wild holies." And I'll raise my arms to the east, to the sky. And I'll say, "Greetings, Father, Son, warmth and light, guidance of time. Thank you for showing us the way through this world." And then I'll lean to the earth. "Greetings, sister body earth, abundant and generous, the place that holds us. Thank you. Thank you for this body." And then, "Hello to the mother waters, givers of life, creation." And as you're saying this and you're speaking to her, you really need to lean in and feel whatever moisture is in the air, whether it's rain or mist or even just the tiniest dewdrop on the grass. You really want to drink in that moisture because we are so blessed to have it. And I'll stand and I'll feel and I'll listen for whatever it is around. And then I'll tuck myself back in and continue with the day. And then I thought, since we have a slightly different format today with the video component, we could do a little bit of self-care energy work.
I would love that.
Yeah, cool. Would you be able to do it too with holding the mic?
Yeah, I'll put this down. Question.
Yeah.
Did you invoke air? Do you invoke air in that invocation?
I think I said turning to the east. It's Father, Son, the body of earth, and then the mother waters.
Mother waters. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
So rather than doing like the 5 directions, so to speak, it's just a different, when I'm in my altar practice, I call in all the directions and all the elements. But the wild holies are like the things that exist, within like between the sun and the earth and everything, within that space. So in theory, when you're working with like the mother waters, the air is infusing the water, which is like the mist or the fog when we're in times we're not having rain, which in California, as you know,
most of the year.
You don't really get that. Yeah, right, sure. All right, so we take a breath into the heart. And we can keep our eyes closed and we begin to rub our hands together. Create some heat. And really get it going. You really want to create some friction. And when you finally get to a place where you feel like you can have some electric zing, you're going to pause and bring your hands together just a bit. And you're going to feel that generated energy that you just brought into being between your palms. And it might be quite small, it could be quite large. You can pull your hands apart a little bit more, kind of play with it, like think of it kind of like silly putty between your hands. You can roll it around. And you can think, does it have a color? A sound in your mind? And then with your eyes still closed, you're going to take your palms, turn them towards you, and pour that energy over the top of your head, past your temples, past your mouth, past your throat. And then you're just going to flick it off of your body. Get that static off. Yeah, good, good, good. And then the next thing we're going to do, we're just going to clean our hands off a little bit. And get a little bit more going. Yeah, it's good energy. Okay, now we're going to do a forehead pull. So you're going to line, it's very particular. There's neural pathways at this exact lineup. So it's fingernail to fingernail on your forehead, and you're going to put your thumbs against your temples. And this is going to feel nice and weird to see on camera later. You're going to really pull it apart, across your forehead, back and behind your ears, off your hair, and then snap off that static. Perfect. Let's do it again. Right. Line up your fingernails, thumbs, and really pull. Behind your ears, down your neck, off your hair, snap off the static. Oh, that's a good one. Good. One more time. And thumbs at your temples. There you go. And really pull behind your ears, down the neck, off the hair. Pull off the static. And then we're gonna bring our fingertips up to our hairline, line up your fingernails again, and just like kind of really work in there for a minute. And just really move your scalp back and forth. Just feeling it move exactly. Yeah. Really pull up on your muscles. That's good. And then when you're ready, you're gonna pull it down back behind your ears, off your hair. There you go, that's good. Let's do it one more time. Work it out. I always think about this for me. I'm like, oh, how much Dallas hair can I have if I really work on this? And pull behind your ears, off your hair. Snap it off. Good, yeah. And then right behind your scalp, where your neck meets the bottom of your skull, you have a little dent. You're gonna line up your fingernails again, yeah? And just do the same thing. You're gonna kind of work it out. This is often such a point where we hold that tension, right?
So much.
And run it and kind of like ground the tips of your thumbs behind your ears and pull back down your neck, off your hair, snap off the static. Good, and one more time. Yeah, that's good. Chicken's going off. Someone's laying an egg. Spring is here. All right, snap that off. Pull it off your hair. This is such a good thing to do after like a long day on Zoom, or when, you know, you're on that two-way microwave radio that is our phone. Oh, get all that stuff off of you. And then just to clear that off just one more time, because we had all that static that we threw off, just clear your hands, warm them up, and then just bring them over your heart. Bring yourself back into your body. Grateful for this space. I think that we're ready to dive in now. Cleared off that stuff. We've been all over the place today, so it's good to kind of get back in.
Oh, thank you for that, Katie.
Yeah.
Oh, I like the
I know,
head,
right?
the scalp ones.
It's good. I know.
So
yeah.
much.
And we don't really think about it. You
there.
know, that's, I think, except for when we get our hair cut and someone's really doing that for us. You know, most of us aren't having our hair washed by somebody else regularly, and like that touch in general, and really working, because there's so many muscles that are up here in our scalp when we're using our facial expressions and or tension or whatever, you know, like all that's getting contracted and released, and it's good to pay attention. There's a lot going on up there.
Mm-hmm. And tell me, what did you study when you were up? You said in San Francisco.
Yeah, so I actually, I'm currently enrolled in the Community Herbalist program with the School of Traditional Healing Arts, which is a newer faction of Scarlet Sage Apothecary.
Cool.
In the mission. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, so it's ongoing for the entirety of this year, and I've been really enjoying it.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
And you get to grow so many of your own herbs here, I imagine, and just really have that deep connection.
Yes, and to be able to have a relationship with both herbs that I've started from seed and then what was already here is super special. And then also, you know, when it relates to my knowledge that I can share at Circle, the shop, because we have so many beautiful wellness lines now. Yeah, it just keeps you really, I don't know, gets you like kind of touched and honed in, and it's another way to honor the seasons, you know, just even the ritual of tea. the preparation of tea and what it is that you're working with and making. And now, so now I can make balms and oils and flower essences, and there's a first aid component. And the whole purpose of your community herbalism certificate is that you can kind of be the healer for your community, right? For your neighbors and friends and family. So you're not in a space where you're practicing clinically, but it just really kind of gives you that, like that homesteading knowledge, I guess you could say, in working with the herbs.
Cool.
Yeah.
So tell me, where are your ancestral lineages from?
Yes. Well, I can kind of start a little bit closer up the timeline and then work my way back a bit. So I am originally from Virginia, the Tidewater region, where my family still is. I moved to California in 2011, I want to say, so 10 years now, which is wild. I thought at first when I moved here, I was like, I'll give it 5 years and like see how it goes. And then that, I think, came and went without me hardly even noticing it, considering everything that happened between then and now. So yes, I was raised on the lands of the Pamunkey and the Mattaponi tribe, and then we are currently seated on the occupied land of the Ama Mutsun, which is part of the kind of greater Ohlone territory. And our mountain is Mount Madonna to the east, and our waters are the Monterey Bay to the west. And we're held between the two in this beautiful valley in South Santa Cruz County, in a town called Corralitos. And I've been here for 3 years and bounced around many places before then. But to go even farther back, my mother's side of my family were watermen. I feel like my brother still is within that that practice for sure, avid fishermen. But we had a seafood business called Diggs Seafood, and Diggs, as you can imagine, was probably the name they were given when they came over to literally dig up clams and mussels from the marshes, right? Because on the Three River system, the ecosystem there is just primarily, marshland, which is not the experience that I have here in California. And then my father's side, his grandparents came from Greece and moved to New Jersey and had a chocolate factory. When he was little, he had 3-foot-tall chocolate Easter bunnies for Easter and that sort of thing. And but they ended up moving to Canada, where he went to secondary school, and then he came to Virginia for college, which is where he met my mother. So my ancestral lineage, I have about 50% of the British Islands and Irish heritage, which looks to be within the, kind of centralized. It looked like to be London and spreading out from there. And then the bulk of the rest of my heritage is Greek from my father's side, from the Peloponnese, Crete, Ionian Islands. And that's actually part of my lineage that I really identify with, not only because of my last name, which is the Americanized version of what it was when they came over many years ago. But I feel I've always been super interested in Greek mythology, the gods and the goddesses and their stories and how they influence, zodiacal placements and knowledge and learning and art and history. And moraki, which is a Greek word for to put your soul completely into something, is an ethos that I live by within my life. Whatever I do, I want to do it to the very, very best of my ability. And my Greek heritage also influenced the name of my company, Eothen, which is a Greek word for from the east, or, first light, as you had looked up before. And that just felt really right when I was putting together this kind of creative entity, something that called in to literally being from the East Coast for geographical purposes. And then, having it be a word that's not necessarily, I was already having to explain my last name or pronounce it to people always. They'd be like, Katie, and I'm like, right here. Chirgotis, it's phonetic. And Eothen, I feel like it's the same kind of vibe. And it's a good way to start conversations for sure. And then the rest of it is like unicorn, so.
Unicorn. Awesome. Obviously. Duh. Wow. Oh, that's cool. Do you have a particular Greek god or goddess that you identify with or work with regularly? Or
I do work with Diana Artemis primarily. She is one who I find such strength within, and she's, her calling is to the moon, which is lunation cycles are something that I use within my personal practice frequently. And also as a Cancer, I'm ruled by the moon, as are many of us. But yeah, I think that when you really kind of sync up to this face that is always facing us, right? Like the moon doesn't really change, but just the way that we perceive them. And that's just really informed how I've thought about strength and courage and perseverance, right? Like it shifts, it changes. You have to you go with it. And then these big tidal influxes of when you really feel within that power. And sometimes that tide will ebb and you will need to rest within that space. And you can't really fight it, right? It's like this bigger thing than us. Yeah. So Diana Artemis is on my altar currently.
Beautiful. Beautiful. So you are, if someone said you are a fairy, how does that make you feel? Honestly, like, I don't care if it makes you feel like,
I think someone, like literally a good friend of mine called me a fairy yesterday. So it's an often used term, which is kind of funny. I haven't really thought about myself being a part of the Fae per se, but it does make sense. Like when I think about my childhood, I was, 100% in communication with them.
Okay,
sure.
Good. That was on my internal list of what to ask you about. So let's go there. What do you tell us about a childhood memory of connecting with the Fae or gnomes or nature spirits in some way that was more than just the physical world? It was something, a spark there.
Well, I feel I was, as many of us were and are when we talk about our inner child, very sensitive when I was little. And I really looked to nature for my comfort and my safety. So I had mentioned that I am from Virginia, but my very early childhood days were actually in North Carolina.
Oh, what
I
part?
know. And
we talked
didn't you
about
live
this
in
briefly.
Asheville at some point or something like that?
I lived in Raleigh-Durham.
Okay. I lived, I was in like Winston-Salem until I was 2.
Okay, I know that.
And then I was outside of Charlotte in like a tiny town, like Lincolnton County or something like that. Maybe we should talk about it.
Middle of nowhere.
Middle of nowhere, for sure. So my early days were in North Carolina, in my father's immense garden. My father was the one who taught me to be in love with plants, for sure. He was a flight attendant for 35 years, which is a kind of an interesting thing. So, he'd be casted off traveling, and then when he was home, he was really home. And he was and still is an avid gardener and grew an incredible bounty of food and flowers for my family. Like I was so fortunate to have that abundance in my life. There was always, 150 tomato plants some years. No one needs that many tomatoes.
What would you do with them all?
I think that when I was older, I would take them to the restaurants where I would wait tables and like sell them or something. It was, I guess other people were like had Girl Scout cookies. I had tomatoes.
You're an entrepreneur, so it makes sense.
I guess so. Yeah, I never really thought about it that way.
Girl Scout tomatoes.
Right? Girl Scout cookies, hand-grown tomatoes. I don't know.
Fairy tomatoes.
Yeah. So when I was a child in North Carolina, I spent most of my time in the woods, in the garden, making flower stews with, just like taking petals and mud and moss and like stirring in my whatever cauldron was possible, which was sometimes my brother's. Remember like those plastic kid bicycles or whatever, or like fire trucks with like, and the seat would come up. And so that was,
oh my God, that's amazing.
I'm sure you probably didn't appreciate
It's a potion
me.
in motion.
It really was. And the thing, I could like take it around the yard with me because I was on wheels. Oh, it was very convenient. Yes, so I was always making potions, and I was thinking to myself, what were the necessary steps I needed to take to transform myself into a mythical creature? What did that require? I would not step on moss fully because I believed the fairies were in the moss and I didn't want to disturb them at all. And I had certain trees that had treasures and altars that I would build around them. If I found animals who had passed on, I would hold ceremony for them in the woods and give them proper burials. My brother and I, because it was like the suburbs in the 90s, basically North Carolina, and you could be on your bicycle, until like
cruising.
Oh, cruising.
Until like dark, and
your mom's like, bye, don't come back until it's dark, till it's dinner time. And I remember I had found, like, someone had hit a squirrel or something like that, and I had found it, and I was completely bereft. And then I got my little brother Evan, he's 2 years younger than I am. I had a pink bike and he had a blue bike, which was like very gender normative, but fine.
Totally.
And you know how I feel about pink. We've talked about that
yeah.
prior.
You should have had a beige bike.
I should have had a beige
bike
or like a mustard colored bike that had fanny packs on them. And we packed up the fanny packs with Band-Aids and Neosporin and some Bactine. And I made them come out on rounds with me to go around the neighborhood looking for any animals who had been hit. So then we could potentially heal them, bring them back, keep them. Because my whole goal, of course, was just like a pet squirrel and a pet crow and a pet.
I mean, obviously, I get it.
I mean, yeah.
I'm not obviously, and I get it, but like, obviously, you're doing that. Like, oh my God.
I know.
What dream to have a pet crow, a pet
I
squirrel.
know. Someday.
And to like resuscitate this poor little creature who's been hit. You know?
It never really worked out for me with the Neosporin and the Band-Aids with that, but I tried. It was a good effort. Yeah, and so I feel, you know, in my relationship with animals and with the plants and with, you know, the sun and the wind and the waters, like, yeah, I guess I existed in that fairy world for as long as possible. I remember bawling my eyes out when I turned 10 because I was convinced when you hit double digits, like, you started to enter the adult world.
Oh, wow.
And you'd have to, like, leave, you know, the portal of childhood behind and that access to everything. Like,
Wow.
I knew that
Where
it
did
was
that
going to
come
be a distance.
from?
I don't even know. I mean, I'm trying to think if there was like a movie that I watched or a book that I read. I mean, I was very obsessed with the movie The Last Unicorn. Did you ever watch? Yeah, that and like Neverending Story and the Wrinkle in Time series, you know, which had mostly to do, you know, with like young ones like on this quest, on this journey, right?
And there's a lot of mythical creatures and magic.
It's right up our alleys for sure. Yeah. But I like to think that in turning 10 and then beyond, you know, I think that we all go through phases where there is distance and we come back again. And now in my third decade, like I feel like I'm closer, than I have been in a long time, which is very sweet.
So you said you were making these herbal stews.
Yeah.
Or I guess
I'm doing that
plant
now too,
stews.
guess,
I know.
huh?
We're drinking
We're literally drinking an herbal stew.
an herbal stew. You want to tell everyone what's in it?
We're having cleavers and mint that grow, both of these grow wild here on the land. And cleavers is such a wonderful springtime plant to work with moving lymph, you know, working with your lymphatic system, just like spring cleansing. Has a real cucumbery taste to it, which is super nice.
It's real nice. Real refreshing. I love it paired with the mint.
Me too. Never a bad choice with the mint.
So you were kind of hoping to become a mythical creature too. I would make a guess, but I want to hear from you. Which mythical creature or creatures were you kind of aiming for?
I mean, definitely a unicorn.
Okay, that's what I was going to say. Like unicorns.
And I'm not even sure. I mean, I was very obsessed with horses as well, so I'm assuming that was like, well, if there's that, there's got to be this kind of thing.
That's
what about
amazing.
you?
I had a dream last night that I saw the most beautiful horse, and it had this like tawny tan kind of rust, like kind of like the lighter parts of your hair color.
Like a palomino.
I don't know which one that is, but and then it had like a kind of beautiful curly mane, and it was like light tan, like lighter, almost like blondish, and it had its hair done up in like a bow on it or something. It was like the most gorgeous horse I've ever seen, and it just knew that I thought it was gorgeous, and it was like it just stepped over its fence. The fence, it was as if the fence was no thing. The fence
Or
just,
his legs were so long.
right, it just was like boop, because it was like, yes, I love love. And I was like, oh, wow. And it was just so enriching. And I was like, wow, that was really cool. So I feel like the unicorn and horse energy has been potent. And I just want to acknowledge all the, you know, horse spirits and unicorn spirits hanging out with us here. Like, hello. Yes, I see you.
I also love that you had that dream, whereas like I have dreams about my taxes at this point.
Oh
so
my God.
hell yeah, to curly haired.
I'll transfer you some dreams.
Please give me those dreams.
So tell me about your relationship with unicorns,
Okay.
please.
Well, wow, this is so funny. I'm so glad to talk about this, but this is not what I, you know, in my flower life.
No one's asking you about
No
unicorns.
one really, no one is.
and
No one is.
rainbows.
I actually literally had my husband put I took my husband's phone at one point. I changed my name to Gorgeous Wild Mustang.
Yes.
So that's what comes up when I call. I wish there was like a whinnying ringtone or something, but
There
no.
is out there.
I mean, anybody who wants to send me that MP4 or
Hit us
whatever,
up.
like hook it up. Yes. So of course, going back to my childhood, I was very, as I've mentioned, being really into mythology and storytelling when I was younger. Still am. Storytelling in a different way now. The concept of the unicorn, of being this being that might be the last, right? And not knowing if there were any more of its kind left, and how it still, despite that fact, presented itself to humankind, not knowing what was going to happen, but just in full trust. And that trust, was somewhat violated because, of course, as we know, it was the whole story, which, it only comes to a virgin, or it only approaches a virgin, and it was then captured. I also don't really believe in this whole virgin-esque story.
I think it has a different meaning than what we prescribe it today, of someone who was pure of heart.
But I think when we were little in the 90s, that's
right,
the way
we didn't
we thought
know
about
that.
it.
Yeah.
And then you tell little girls, you can never see a unicorn unless you literally don't,
don't
have sex.
Don't be,
I mean,
don't
that'll
be sexual.
that'll mess you up. Are we allowed to cuss on this podcast?
All the words.
Okay, cool.
All the everything, whatever.
Just making sure, because I tend to.
You can drop them.
I tend to drop them, yeah. So, yes, and that story of this complete and perfect trust and transitioning and being willing to maybe leave the life that you knew to be able to share space with something else, right? And not knowing how that was going to change, but always seeking, always seeking another one of your kind, hoping that there was another. And so then, as I got older and my interest shifted more to, the horse, for sure, obsessed with horses. And then you get into high school and then it's boys for some of us. And then you get older and it's career and your place. And I think I am back to that space again. When you think about yourself as an individual, you're like, am I the last? Which is a kind of odd thing to say. But I think that many of us are in this space now where sometimes we believe that the way we think or view the world is not like others. And how do we relate, right? And how can we be in space and feel like that we belong? I think many of us struggle with this idea of belonging. And I think the unicorn struggled with that as well. So yeah, perhaps it's a totem of mine or something like that I can turn back to. And I actually haven't talked about unicorns in a really long time, so I really appreciate this.
Yeah, totally.
To that.
I mean, I feel like the unicorns want to be talked about. And do you invoke them? I mean, do you work with them personally, or?
I just, I think that what I was just saying is it's a funny thing because I feel like that I haven't in such a long time.
Okay, so it hasn't even been external. It's been internal, external. You haven't really summoned them. I feel like they're knocking on the door.
I mean, they are welcome to come in anytime. Maybe Jupiter is a bit of a unicorn.
He's put a little unicorn horn on him.
Oh my God. How cute would that be?
That would be ridiculous. Yeah. So, I mean, I really get that. I really resonate with unicorns. I literally have a unicorn on my altar right now.
Kind of look like one.
I feel like one.
Just
I mean,
the
literally
hair,
rainbows and unicorns.
The colors, the sparkling eyes,
Bring it. And so I just the past few weeks, I guess the past month, have remembered that connection, and been like, oh, wait. Because someone else I was talking to, they were really into dragons and they were talking about that connection. I was like, oh, wait, yeah, unicorns and that energy and that power. And, we are taught to give up so much, and we're taught that these mythical creatures aren't real. But even if we can't tangibly see them or touch them in the physical reality, I do feel very much that they're a wisdom and a presence. And I'm so curious to, to engage more with that and learn more about what that is. And I feel like they can be our guides to taking steps beyond this kind of world we grew up in and kind of sometimes feel trapped in. And they can, just kind of like nature, hey, here's here's some other opportunities or possibilities or just a different way. So
Well, I work a lot with the bearded iris flower, which is my favorite flower. Its energy, its essence is related to the rainbow and the rainbow gods and goddesses who exist within that. And then, of course, rainbows and unicorns are tied in together for sure. And really, you know, these beings or energies or essences are all about, they're a messenger. They're passing messages back and forth from this realm and the higher realm. And that's something that I feel like myself and probably many people seek, is this communication like with divine, right? Or with higher powers, or like what's beyond what we see. And recently I've been getting more and more into the study of dark matter in the solar system, which of course is the majority of space actually, but we cannot see it. It's not like an invisible thing, but it's not, you know, we can't perceive it because our little human bodies are unable to sense into how that exists in space. And if dark matter exists, why don't unicorns exist? Right? Like, we don't know. It's all out there.
I hear that.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, if we do you ever watch those universe shows that are like, I don't know, they like literally talk about space, but they sound so psychedelic that you're like, how is this even, like, it breaks my brain.
I know, totally. Yeah. That, I have such admiration for astrophysics, physics, science, right? And that's something, you know, my brain doesn't have that same capacity, but man, I love hearing about it and learning more. And then, of course, more recently, in what it is that we can perceive, what we can see, what's going on right now with like the satellites that are being thrown up into our orbit, and, you know, how we interact with energies or frequencies here on Earth. Yeah, it's something that I think that we all need to be actually talking more about, because even though we can't, in our day-to-day lives, or like microcosm, we're not really taking them in or realizing what's out there. Like, that has a lot of effect on what's going on out in the universe, right? And we are not only a part of this connective tissue of Earth, like, we're also part of everything that's out there as well. And if we want to be able to continue to explore and learn about it, then like the whole aspect of, you know, us traveling to Mars as like a, you know, potential alternative planet, like, we can't even get it right here. You know, like, why would we go to Mars? So
yeah,
that's like a whole other conversation. Jupiter, what do you have to say?
Jupiter, what do you think about nuclear arms proliferation?
Jupiter, what do you think about dark matter?
I literally just watched a show the other night, and they were talking about exactly that, of like going to Mars, and people are like, well, yeah, we need to learn how to live on Mars. And this astrophysicist, I guess, I don't remember exactly what he was, but he was talking about how, well, our best shot at success is here on Earth, right? And so, like, why don't we focus on getting it right here? And he's a fucking astrophysicist who's like into space exploration,
and who should want to go to space, right?
He's like, what about this? Like, this is right here. Let's get it right.
I know. Yeah, it's wild. Yeah, I'm not like, I don't have to go to the red planet. I like it here,
right?
I mean, I know that, like, you know, I think some of us feel like we are aliens to begin with and are just kind of having a visitation here on Earth, but I'm like, this is pretty cool what we have going on. You know, this works. It feels good. It suits us.
It's a cool vibe. And it's beautiful. This Earth is so freaking beautiful. Blows my mind.
We're so lucky. We are so lucky. And yeah, that was one of the things, like, what happened this past year when we were, you know, brought back into lockdown. And the planes came out of the sky and the cars came off of the highway, and Earth had a chance to breathe and to rest, right? And then how quickly she rejuvenated.
It was amazing.
Such a testament. If we just didn't like fuck with it, how good it could be.
And nature does have such like, it has a natural ability to regenerate.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, if we just stop messing with it, like you said, stop fucking with it, it can do that. Or we can even facilitate that process. Become allies of the mushrooms and the fungi, and spread spores that help break down toxins in soils, and then invite in insects that birds then come and eat and poop and drop seeds, and the seeds grow into plants, and all of a sudden we have new life again. Like,
speaking my language.
It's amazing.
For sure.
It's amazing. So I want to go back a little to the iris, the bearded iris.
Yes.
And I want to hear about how you sense the energies or communications of plants and flowers. How do they speak to you? Go, just run with it.
In my working life or just in general?
All
the things. Yeah.
Full spectrum.
Yeah, I count myself very fortunate in that my art is centered around a medium that is a living entity, so to speak. You know, when we cut a flower or a branch, then the life cycle is ending, right? And then we're having to look at that really closely. I think in Western society, the whole notion of death, that transition of death, is very difficult. And I like to really think about that process when I'm working with this particular medium, because it's so temporary, right? And it's a luxury. You could call it a luxury item to have flowers in your house, but is it?
I think it's unnecessary.
I think it's so necessary to be present with them. I was just saying earlier today when we were back at the shop, like the shop becomes far more alive when there's flowers in the shop, when it's like filled with flowers, because they're just emanating so much juice. I mean, I think they're just offsetting all of the weird stuff with the radio towers and cell phone towers that we have, you know, zinging stuff around. Like, plants have the generosity to absorb that and take that into their being and flush out through their root system to be used for something else. And I 100% believe that. And it's something as simple as having a house plant, like a humble pothos ivy, makes such a shift within your energy of your home. So to bring flowers into your home, to really lean into the gifts of the season, to allow your eye to play over their colors and their textures and take in their scent, and you know that they like bring us back into our body, truly. And when you work with flower essence medicine, it's something where, you know, you line it up within a solar or lunar event, and you ask permission from the plants. And if you're granted permission, then you cover the surface of a small bowl of water with their earthly material, and then their solar energetics infuse the water of, you know, said bowl over some set amount of time. And with any luck, like, you're hopefully sitting with them during that process, so then you can kind of lean into that communication. And then those energies are something that you can take into your body to work with, you know. And like I said, with bearded iris, the rainbow messenger energy, like, that's a way to kind of, like, you know, turn the dial, so to speak, to up the frequency, to talk to something that's kind of like bigger than you, which is a gift. There's so many ways to work with medicine when it comes to plants, for sure. And one of the things for me, like one of my medicines with them, is getting to have my favorite part of making flowers is literally when I get all of the, you know, bunches home from market or the farmer's market, or from the farms where I source them, and I get to kind of spread them all out and care for them, you know, clean off any kind of dirt or leaves and give them fresh water and have them all together in their groupings. Like, just touching them is the absolute favorite part of my job. And then later on, when I'm arranging them for my work, and oftentimes, you know, when I think about when I'm making, say, like a bridal bouquet, you're making something for this person who is literally going through a portal. They're going in through a life transition. There's just not very many times where we carry flowers. Like, we carry flowers in our hands often when, say, we marry, or they're on top of our box when we die. And there's not really a lot of times or opportunities where we just get to, like, have them all in our arms. I'm very fortunate that I get to have that often. But to go back to the bridal bouquet, you know, like, I'm thinking about that person when I'm making that, like, our conversations, the space that they're going to be in, their surroundings, like their love, their union, their hopes, their dreams. And when you're infusing that into something that they then hold in their hands as well, even for a short amount of time, that's some powerful shit, for sure.
It's a talisman.
It's a talisman. Totally. You're right. Yeah. And it's charged. It's charged with something. You have to make sure it's intentional, for sure.
Mm-hmm. It's got the individual essences of each flower, and then the intention that you've infused in there so lovingly and intentionally. That's
And you're usually, you've been in relationship with them for some stretch of time, depending.
With the person or the flower?
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well,
both,
I guess you could say. With the person, because, I oftentimes book events like a year out. So you've been like talking for a year.
Wow.
You're often
cool.
friends.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, sometimes you even get invited to the wedding because you've spent so much time together. And then with the flowers, now that I've been on this planet for, 3 going on 4 decades, I welcome their arrival when they come back every season, And like seasons for me are marked by who's blooming and who's coming back, from the soil to be seen again. I'm excited, and I do, like I give them greetings and pay them homage and honor them because it's only for a short amount of time if you're working locally and seasonally, which is the way that I like to work. And then they have to, be on their way, and you gotta like wait till next year, and that's fine. I'm good with the wait. There's time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. That's part of the beauty of it's like the evolving rainbow throughout the year.
It is. It so is. And I think, to that point too, I can't imagine if I was like a painter or a sculptor and then I would make art and that would go into someone's house and then I would just know it'd be there for always. I mean,
oh, wow. You like the ethereal nature of it. Mm-hmm.
Because so you really don't like it, it's just going to go away. You have to like make it again. It's harder to destroy a sculpture or a painting. But for flowers, you're like, it doesn't work. But no, it's there for a time and it creates a memory, and then it lives in your memory. And I think that the recall, like for many of us, the way that we actually associate, one of the reasons why we carry flowers when we marry has to do with scent. Because when we have certain scents come back into our field, they call up, certain events in our lives or interactions or conversations or whatnot. And to have that kind of be like the chemtrail, like the moon reflection, so to speak. Yeah.
The chemtrail of the memory.
Yeah. Like that's.
It literally is, though, a trail of chemicals and memory in your brain.
That's super cool to me. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's like psychedelic and emotional and scientific, all of it.
All of it. And it's amazing how scent really will take you there. Like if you smell a smell that your grandmother wore, or even people.
Or the flower she grew in her garden.
She grew in her garden. Mm-hmm. And people even have like psychic smell where they can tell what spirits are around them because they'll smell it psychically. And that, like, if they're a medium, and they can be like, oh, is that so-and-so? And then, like these, so many people have this. It's amazing. I was so surprised to find this when I started talking to people about it. They're like, yeah, I smell things that aren't there all the time. Mm-hmm. It's amazing.
I've only had that happen to me maybe once or twice. And once was when, after my pa had passed.
Oh, wow. What'd you smell?
His cologne in algebra class.
Oh, wow.
But that was the only time I was just like, oh, Pa's here in algebra class.
Wow.
And then it passed on.
That's amazing. Mm-hmm. That's amazing. I love that the totally ephemeral nature of your art. You're like, it's meant to just go away.
Yeah, totally. I mean, there's joy for me in the composting process too.
Same.
Love compost.
Same.
Yeah, for sure. And then, or also just like giving them away, like giving flowers to the guests to take home, or giving them to neighbors, or giving them to the ocean, or giving them to the compost pile. Yeah, I want to give it all away for sure. That's so much a part of like my practice in my life.
I love that. Giving it forward. I mean, I really hadn't thought about how the only times we really carry a large amount of flowers in our arms are, I guess, if you're a gardener, you might sometimes, but most people, marriage and death, you're dead for one of them. So maybe like a prom, you get a little thing. I don't even remember what they're called.
That's true. We had corsages and boutonnieres for that. Yeah.
But yeah,
it's a very ceremonial thing to carry flowers for sure.
Yeah. Like, can we normalize it being normal to just walk down the street with a bouquet?
I mean, how fun is it when you're at the farmer's market or you're coming out from someplace where there's like a flower shop and someone's walking out with flowers? Usually their countenance is very bright. They seem happy. They're either, those flowers are either for themselves or they're about to give them to somebody, which is such great joy. Yeah, we should normalize it. Just have gorilla bouquets everywhere.
Gorilla bouquets. Handing them out.
Just like throwing them at people. Yeah, I'm just kidding.
I mean, if someone threw a bouquet at me, I'd be like, thank you. As long as it didn't have thorns on it.
Totally. Totally.
Gorilla bouquets. Yay. Let's start a trend.
Can do.
Jupiter will like it. He'll catch.
He would. You
He'll
would
fetch.
like it very much.
So when, you were making flower stews and you've had this kind of innate connection, one might say, a knowing that you came in with, and you've somehow gotten from childhood mixing in the seat of your brother's fire truck to, a full-fledged career in life with flowers. And so in between that time, was there a time when you lost connection with the flowers?
Oh, for sure.
All right, tell me about that and how you found your way back, or how they found you.
Yeah, that's so true. So I went to university in Virginia, and I went for print journalism and fine art. I, of course, don't do anything with those now, but I really do feel like going to university gives you the opportunity to have something be complete in 4 years and, kind of figure out like social norms and whatnot. It doesn't have to necessarily mean that like you are that thing forever. But when I graduated, I had thought that I was going to write for magazines. I really, really enjoyed writing. And I guess the tablets came out then or something like that. But there was a time where all the magazines began to shutter. Do you remember that time?
Okay, I went to school for photojournalism and I dropped out because I was like, this is a dying career.
Yes.
And I am not going to make a living and I want to just do something else.
Totally. Yeah. So that was basically what happened. I mean, like what I thought. I mean, of course, that's not true. There are still magazines at the grocery store.
But it's totally shifted. Yeah.
It has. Definitely. And it's so much more ad driven now and everything else.
And everyone has a phone and phones are amazing. And like, I used to have a digital SLR and everyone's like, oh, whoa. But now everyone has the powerful everything. It's like, it's no longer special. But there are levels of, I'm going to say there are levels of special, but it's been like so saturated.
I agree. Yes. And I do still, to me, it is such a luxury to hold a printed piece in my hand. Just recently, we started carrying the Enigma Journal, which is penned by Kelly Levitt. She's up in Canada. And it is stunning. The paper quality, the photography, the writing and context, like, yeah, it's a joy. But you're right, it is so convenient just to like pop through your phone and find an article or view those photos. And now cameras on phones are so powerful and everything else like that. Like, I really do appreciate the crystal that we hold in our hands. Like, don't get me wrong. It's definitely helped me build a business and maintain a business. Same. Yeah. But that all going kind of winging back to that story. So I came out, there were no magazines to write for. I think I was just like knocking around waiting tables, and I had interned with an ad agency when I was in college called the Martin Agency in Richmond, Virginia. And I was very fortunate that they offered me a job, like a front desk job, at said agency when I was like 21, 22. And then the next 5 years of my life were in this advertising world. And advertising is an incredible line of work for creatives, art directors, copywriters, graphic designers. To be in a space where you're not just freelancing, having to hustle, you have a stable job. And that was amazing. I'm so fortunate. And I worked with incredible people. I had beautiful relationships. I had an amazing boss, Kristen Cavallo, who now literally runs that agency, which is such a rad thing to see, this woman in this place of power. But during this time that I was in advertising, I was specifically in production, in radio and TV. There wasn't even like internet ads at that point when I was in advertising until the end. And which was funny because I didn't really watch TV growing up as a kid and I didn't really have that language. And I was not good at that job. I mean, people were very kind to me and like let me believe I was doing okay. Like I could like put a calendar together. And one of the things with production is that you are networking, you're sourcing and resourcing teams and elements and locations, and like you're helping a thing kind of come together and come to life, which now in my later years, like weddings and events are that. So
And a shop,
totally. Yeah, but when I was in advertising, I was not connected to the natural world. I was very consumed by consumerism, for sure. We now have a cat visitor on our set.
Hello, welcome.
Hi, Zoo. Welcome. Zooey's here. Yeah. The witch cat has arrived.
The party's really
The
starting
party's
now.
really starting now. Yeah, for sure. So, and then in my 5th year, I was in the new business department. I had been moved into a position, which was so fortunate, but I was, creating the content for the new business pitches in a different space in the building. I was no longer in production. And my boss at the time, Kristen Follow, who now runs Martin Agency, who really was such a ardent proponent of just like chasing your dreams and really going for what it is that made you feel the most alive. And I had always, I was doing weird things where terrariums were really in back then.
I remember the phase.
Totally. There was books, literally books that you could buy to help you make terrariums. And where my parents lived is like this moss magical land. And I would collect mosses and ferns and build terrariums for people in the agency. It was like kind of my side hustle.
A fairy side hustle, if ever there was one.
I feel like these like things are looping back in a way that I didn't even realize initially. But so yeah, I was doing this terrarium side hustle, and I was just an avid reader of the Design Sponge blog, Grace Bonnie's Design Sponge. And there was this column called We Like It Wild, and it was penned by Alethea Haramplis and Jill Rizzo, who had a flower shop called Studio Chew in San Francisco. And they were these just like 2 rad chicks, best friends, who were making these incredible, wild, seasonal arrangements and like, throwing on a cute dress and like taking a picture with the bouquet on the side of Highway 1. And their lifestyle just seemed so bohemian and free and connected to nature. And I had just decided that I wanted to be a florist and I wanted to work for Studio Chew. But of course, I was not a florist, and I worked behind the desk in Virginia. I wasn't in California. So it took some time, but with the support and encouragement of people in my life and just, a decision that to be the most embodied that I could be in this lifetime for me, I needed to leave everything that I had known, quit my job, leave a really wonderful relationship, sell all my shit. And I drove across the country and I landed in a cabin in the woods in the Santa Cruz Mountains. And first kind of got back into it. I started farming on some land down in Santa Cruz, and where I met my now husband 10 years ago. And we were in Barcelona for a time, but like my goal was always like, I gotta get to San Francisco, I gotta get to Studio Chew. So when we came back, I wrote this love letter to them, basically, which I don't remember everything that it said. I know it was really, really long. And I said something along the lines of, like, I'll take thorns off of roses in the dirtiest, darkest corner of your studio if you'll just let me learn from you. And of course they wrote back and the response was more like, yeah, sure, like come over. Let's see what works out. I literally had just like dumped my like heart onto this piece of paper, or was probably an email now that I'm looking back. And I started interning for them when they had their shop in San Francisco, and that internship turned into part-time, which turned into full-time, turned into studio manager, turned into running their weddings.
Wow.
And, yeah.
You really just kind of...
Because I was Meraki. I was like, my soul was 100%
you were
in it. I was in it, totally committed. And when they got to a point where they decided that they were going to take some different paths in their lives, I don't know what I thought. I guess I just assumed that I would always work for them for the rest of my life or something. I had not really thought that far. Or I had never considered having my own thing, despite my terrarium side hustle and, other entrepreneurial, my selling tomatoes.
Yeah.
Exactly, my activities when I was younger. But the opportunity presented itself, and I was really, really lucky that they were really generous and they let their clients, those who wanted to come with me, came along for the ride, and they gave me a great deal on selling all of their studio supplies, and I just took over the lease on that space, and I literally just off to the races.
Wow.
And that was 2016.
Wow.
I know.
Wow. I had to just count. I was like, what year is it? It's
I
2021.
know. I do that all the
5 years
time.
ago?
Yeah.
Okay.
Totally.
Do the math right.
I'm always like, how old are you? If it's like, if you were born in 1977 and it's 2021, And then I have to like walk back into
97,
tens.
2007, 2017.
I'm
Wait, did I
terrible.
miss one? I know, I feel that. But that's really beautiful, an amazing example of following what lights you up. And
Thanks for that.
just that, I'm so glad you did, because the beauty that you create lights me up when I see it, and lights up so many people. And
It means a lot.
It's amazing. I'm like glad that what you do exists, because it is that wild essence, and it's so different from the like tight contracted bouquets that you kind of see at the grocery store or something. And it's like, no,
There's time and place for that. And
Yeah,
for some
I'm not
people,
hating
like
on
that's
them,
oh
but
no. I mean, I have strong feelings, but I also understand. Like for some, like it's like anything. Some people really love 2% milk.
right.
I like oat milk.
Right.
I
like
there's a
freaking
difference,
oat milk too.
Right. And aesthetic and what works for your life and for your energy and whatnot. But yeah, that is my hope in people's interactions with the flowers that we make, is that they get to relax into something, like relax into an experience, right? And like really explore, really savor it, really take it in.
Yeah, and I feel like they awaken something wild. They really do. It's like,
I hope so.
They do. There's like, just like, it's almost like, let it go. Come on, sun, and show yourself.
Oh
like,
yeah, for sure. There's a lot of like Kundalini serpent energy that can come with flowers. I mean, they're sexy as fuck. They're here for a very specific reason. Right. Yeah. And that's cool. That's cool to be connected to that like very juicy aspect of it, for sure.
So you had kind of, I think it's really funny that you had no thoughts about what you would do, just work for them forever. And this kind of just evolved into like, now it's you. So tell us about your flower business now. How do you describe yourself and what you do?
It's kind of a funny thing. I sort of resisted the term as a florist for a while, because I think for people that might bring up like an FTD kind of style, using flower foam in this classic flower shop with like a cooler, which is funny because I do sort of have that now, not in the FTD style, but a flower shop with a cooler.
So you have a beautiful floral artistry business. You have a shop, and you have this beautiful little homestead here. And I'm curious to hear what little Katie would say about how her life has turned out.
Oh, that is such a great question. I think she'd be like really stoked. I do. Yeah. So much of my childhood life was just in this yearning for connection and communication with nature, and to be able to take those facets in both like my work and my practice and, both my hobby and my ongoing learning. I mean, I think one of the beautiful things with floristry is that you're always being met with different elements or seasonal factors. Every client is different, every scenario or setup is different. And then it's really your adaptability comes into play, which, as we know, like to be on planet Earth, adaptability is super key to stick around. And I think now, since I've been in the practice of working with flowers as long as I've had, I believe it's the card, I think it's the 8 of Pentacles. I could be wrong. But that is when we have come to the place where we're starting to transition, from student into potential master. And I know that we're never a master in our lives, but it takes a long time to build up the muscle memory, right? And to commit to something, to really be a true student, and to be willing to kind of grind for a long time and have some of the work be really, really shitty. And some of the work can be really, really good, and make mistakes, learn from them, expand from them, get really humble. I think sometimes about who I was in my younger life within my art career. And I think there was so much more ego then, based more so out of insecurity and fear of, how I would be perceived or judged, or how the work would be, translated or interpreted by the viewer. And now that I'm older and I've had my ass handed to me a couple of times in many different ways, the ego has come out of it a good bit. And when that happens, your hands and your mind and your skeletal system are used to doing a thing. That leaves so much more room up for creativity and I think spirituality. Now my relationship is not so much of like, I'm going to do this and you're going to do that, more transactional. I think now we really get just to kind of be in synergy with one another, and I get to consider them in a way that I was perhaps too nervous to before, or too consumed by, or just too like locked up, right, and just like process. And it's not as if I ever, if it's my hope as a Sag rising that I'm a student forever. I love learning. It's the huge part of my, the thing that drives me forward. And I think what I'm just learning now is just acceptance, right? And ease. And just like letting things unfold as they will, versus so much of my life I feel like I've been trying to control the things, schedule the things. So then I would feel comfortable. But to be uncomfortable, I think we all experienced a lot of uncomfortability this past year in particular, which was, an enormous amount of lessons. And we had to really digest that. Now, like, our detox systems are like kind of really working that out. I think we're in it for a couple more years also, to be sure. But to be in that release phase, right? And just like kind of giving it all up and then just giving it up to something else that's bigger than me is very freeing. Yeah. So yeah, I guess I'm in my like kind of my free form, free flow state of my art at this point in my career.
Love that. And I hear in what you're saying, becoming the vessel, from that ego to the vessel, and that surrender of the control. Do you want to tell me more about what being a vessel means to you?
Well, to me, in being a vessel, it doesn't mean that you're hollow or empty. There is a framework to hold so much more, right? And I've always, in my best, most prolific periods of work, I think most people can say, if they look at it through a certain lens, when you're a channel, right? You're just letting it just flow into you and out of you again. And there's no attachment to it, right? It's just like, it's just flow. That's all flow. And to be a vessel, I think once again, when I think about, it's like, it's the opportunity to hold something and not have to own it or grip it. You're just holding, and eventually it can be poured out. And it's nothing to you. It doesn't take anything away from you. It adds to you when it's there, but it's not like you're less than when it's gone. You're just waiting for the next. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I love that description of it. Okay, so back to our physical reality. Not that being a vessel isn't, but when did the shop become a twinkle in your eye, and how?
I wanted to actually add very quickly
Go for it.
to the vessel. And I've been thinking a lot about, the female identifying body, or to be a being that has a womb. And I actually am kind of an awkward, I am feminine and female identifying, but I've always had a lot of difficulty, I should say, with talking about womb space, womb speak, calling it back in, oftentimes in circles when we kind of go that direction. I'm like, ooh, and I'm not really sure why. But when I really think about, in this sense of being the vessel, to be in this particular kind of body, we have a hollow organ that's meant to be filled with something, and it will also release it often, right? Like throughout our lives.
And even every month.
Exactly. Exactly.
In a sense.
Synced up to the moon, right? And then, or also to like our surroundings, the people that we're with. There's all these kind of odd little tunes that are going on that this vessel is filled and releases by. And just, I think the fact alone, that science nerd part of myself, when I think about like a hollow organ, and what that's supposed to mean and do and function as related to being a vessel, it's a kind of wild thing, you know, like we're like literally an urn. And I work with that sort of form all the time when I'm, you know, filling them with flowers or branches or leaves or whatever. Yeah. So I just wanted to kind of loop that back, that just kind of odd thing of like, it's on the inside for me and it's also on the outside in my work. And the things that I put into it are like synced with these, you know, rhythms and seasons and tides and pulls and changes and this like greater kind of spinning galaxy spiral dance, you know, that we're all connected to, which oddly makes me feel less alone in a way. Okay, now we can talk about the other question that you had. So I kind of wanted to spiral down that
I really
K-hole
love
for a
that,
minute.
that it's true. As female-bodied people, we have this womb space. And I hadn't particularly considered it like that. I'm sure so many listeners are like, duh, because there's so many people who are so attuned to the womb. And that's your inner chalice, your inner, yeah, cool. And
even the whole idea of the sword and the stone, right? And the seeking of the chalice, like
the Holy Grail.
The Holy Grail is that. Is that like creative empty space that's meant to be filled and emptied and filled and emptied. It's kind of wild.
How do you tend to yours? Your creative, empty, wild space.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, like I mentioned, I need to explore this more. Why I have uncomfortability around that, you know.
It's not even necessary. I mean, you can talk about your womb, but even just your creative expression.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying.
Okay, cool.
Because it's all kind of tied up with one another.
Okay,
you know,
cool.
like I feel I don't have children. I'm in my late 30s. I'm kind of in this phase where the conversation often comes around to like, well, are you going to have children? And I have such a rich creative life. And I do feel like I mother so many things. Like I'm a mother to Eolith and Floral. I'm a mother to now Eolith and Circle. I'm a mother to Jupiter, the chickens, the cats, my land. You know, like I'm in this nurturing space. And I also feel like motherhood is one of the most creative endeavors one can take on of all time.
Literally creating a human.
Creating life. And then also creating a human that can contribute to the greater, you know, like the greater scheme of what we're all existing within. And I sometimes wonder if that's like, you know, when I think about my creativity and how I lean so hard into it, but because it's outside of my body, that's much easier, you know? Like it kind of goes back in an odd way to our conversation earlier about unicorns and dark matter. Because like something, you know, it's like something that I can see and interact with, you know, literally holding flowers in my hand versus really understanding like where that creativity stems from. Like, yeah, now that I think about the question, you know, and being a channel and like we don't know where it's coming from or where it's going. It just kind of feeds right through. We can't see it. It's not a way to be measured or quantified. There's no amount that an analytical brain could do to really understand that. I think that's part of that phase where I am now, just that letting go, just like, I don't know. I don't fucking know. It just happens. And sometimes, like I said before, like it can really, during COVID, like hard COVID last year, I think many of us who were in the creative field just felt completely sucked dry and like had nothing to give. It was like really hard to have inspiration or to feel like you could make work. And some of us are really prolific and maybe we went in and out of those phases. I was also a person who, having worked, you know, how many years? 25 years now or something like that, like since I was 14. Having worked basically every day of my life until then, and being an entrepreneur, man, you thought you worked hard before. Wait till you have your own thing. And then you could always be working. And it was the first time really and truly where I just stopped. And I didn't feel, you know, I think that there's like that patriarchal capitalistic guilt that creeps in with like, how much shouldn't you be more productive during this time?
Yeah.
Shouldn't you be learning a language? Shouldn't you be, you know, like growing the most epic garden or starting another business or taking dance classes and, you know, like getting your turns down or something like that. And I had nothing. I literally had nothing to like draw upon. And I think there was purpose in that because I think to be truly in a creative space, there also needs to be more rest. And I talk about this more and more now as I'm working into the shop. This, we exist in a capitalistic society. We contribute to it. We have rents to pay, food to put in our mouth. You got to put gas in the car, unfortunately. There's a reliance on so many things that capitalism is able to kind of wrap us up into. And in having a shop, I am participating in that in a way that I hope is deliberate consumption. As humans, we are consumptive beings. And we enjoy that process. But it's my hope with Circle, which sort of kind of like cropped up into my mind's eye. I want to say about 2 years ago, I was in this really kind of high productive stage in my flower career. And I was working almost every weekend, 12 plus hour days, and I could do it, but I could feel it of how much it required. And I also started to realize that the well that I was able to draw upon to keep going, keep making it good, and still have, healthy relationships, taking care of the body, being able to kind of regenerate that creativity so I could be at my best for my clients was starting to really dwindle. And I was like, well, what is this going to look like for me if I want to stay in this line of work? What could that be? And a shop came to mind. I was traveling a lot at the time for my job, and I really enjoy travel for sure. I love exploring. Again, that's that Sag rising, but that Cancer sun, man, they want to stay home. They want to be in one place with their soap pillowcase and their bourgeois coffee or whatever. Space for me is really important too, for sure. So anyways, when I thought about what would be that opportunity, what would a shop do? And basically a shop in building a space, a creative space that I could curate, art direct, and kind of keep my wings over, but maybe not necessarily after a certain amount of time, have to be in it every single day, that it would become its own thing. I think anytime that you begin a business, it's like any stage of development. There's an infancy where they're highly dependent upon you, toddler phase where they're kind of, the energy is starting to scatter a bit, and there's steps being made and adventures being taken, but not too far away. And then eventually they continue to grow and evolve and mature and can hold their own. And I'm definitely, we're in infancy stage now that we started the shop, which never would have happened if COVID didn't happen, because oftentimes I'm booked a year in advance. So there was never any time to, because people are thinking about
you gotta plan
their
a
weddings,
wedding.
for a whole year. So where would there have been time to design a store, develop a new business plan, work with contractors, just figure out the vision for the thing? And when COVID happened and my entire calendar was wiped clean, there was, again, we're coming back to space. There was spaciousness for creativity. The space really, I didn't push really hard for it. It kind of presented itself to me. And then when that happened and the timing lined up as it did, and I just kept getting yeses in my body. I kept checking out, just is this right? Should I be doing this? And it was, yeah, do it, try it, see how it goes. You can do it. Never done it before, but who's to say that you can't? Because when I look back at the history of my life, I'm just how the fuck did I get here? How did that even happen? And so, I signed a lease in July, and we started kind of from a blank box, and then we finished and opened by November. And of course, when I signed the lease, I was we'll be open by, I think it was 3 months or something like that. It was sort of, I don't know. I'm oh, Katie. Poor little Katie, just thinking it all happened with a snap of the fingers, but things take time. And the establishment of the shop will take time because, we opened at a particular point where it was 25% capacity for people to come in.
Oh, right.
And people were largely stuck in their house, and they weren't even really venturing out.
I remember at first you had to book an appointment.
Yeah, it didn't feel safe to come into spaces. And then also being able to ensure that people could feel safe in that space, to ensure that people could feel safe in that space. And, because there is this herbal wellness aspect to it, immune support and talking about what we can do just to support our bodies and get our systems in play. This is all before the vaccine was ever really like a thing. And it's changing now. You know, there's more people who are out and about, and it's really sweet, especially recently. Older people who are just like, I didn't even know you were here, because they probably hadn't left their friggin' house for like 9 months or something like that. Yeah. And my dream is to be able to have events in the space and host teachers and healers and makers and artists and have them come in and do speaking engagements and workshops and, you know, like really extend ourselves to the community and be a part of it. Like, yeah, that's the long-term goal. But I also realize like that will come exactly when it needs to come. And there's not a huge rush, you know, as we could have really have realized this past year. It's like time is such a concept. It just stretches and contracts, and just where we are within that, you know, that string. There was I mentioned before how I was so into the Wrinkle in Time series. I still to this day remember very clearly, there's not any illustrations in those books, but there's this one diagram where it was talking about, right, like time travel. And it was this piece of string and there was an ant crawling across it. And in one figure, the string is pulled apart between two hands and the ant has like a really long way to go. And in the next figure, the hands come together and there's like a U of the string and the ant's just like, boop.
I love that.
And that's literally what happens to us. Like, it has now become more apparent to most people how like that's just what's up. So yeah, we'll see how long the shop is. Maybe it's 3 years, maybe it's 30. And that's fine, whatever it ends up being. But it's been a lot of fun, and it's been an excellent creative exercise as we've gone. And to be able to, you know, be able to meet people like you, have people come in and have conversations and opportunities for connection. Like, we all need connection so much right now.
Totally.
Right? To find one another again, to be in space, and like to remember how to be in space together. Yeah. Yeah, so with any luck, it can help facilitate that.
That's beautiful. I definitely read those books, but I didn't remember anything from them except the mitochondria.
Oh, for sure.
All I remember is like mitochondria. But I love that, you know, and speaking of that, of you know, that ant on the line and then the line coming together, and he can just, he, she, it, I don't know, they, the ant, can just go and bypass all of that loop and just leap in a sense, but with not even a leap, it's like a step. And you know, this is something I've been thinking about. I've been just kind of like unicorns. I've also been remembering manifesting with it, which is such a charged word and concept. And,
especially now. Yeah,
especially
really
now.
examining that for sure.
And yet it's true. We are able to align with the creative forces and consciously create in a way, like create with earth, create with spirit. And I'm remembering that things like that are possible. Like, I've always known it, but I guess I've kind of been in the thick of just doing things that I kind of, and with all the like controversy and people saying, this is how you got to do it. No, this is how you got to do it. It's kind of like, fuck everybody.
I know. Overculture is real.
Yeah, what culture?
Overculture is real.
Overculture. Whoa,
Yeah.
what do you mean by overculture?
Just the overall, what you're conditioned to believe, or how things are supposed to go, or the line that you're supposed to follow. I mean, you know, you and I are both from the East Coast, and I'm a little more south, but there was an expectation of, you know, you went to high school.
Yep.
Like, if you were lucky, you got to go to university. You probably married the person that you met at university.
Yep.
You had babies by 24, 25, and like you just lived your little life
In your town.
And you know, like that's all. It actually, to me, is also very beautiful.
Yeah, totally.
And there's a lot to be said for that. And I've been thinking more and more, having had this much space away from my family, you know, like what it means to have a culture now where families are often spread apart by so much distance, because there's the capability to do it. And, you know, our jobs are taking us in those directions, or the internet makes it possible for us to be literally anywhere, you know, in a hammock in Mexico, and you're beaming into your job in like Iowa or something like that. Like, yeah, it's possible. And that's fucking rad too. Both sides are amazing. But at the same time, like, it's such an individual choice for the person, right? And how it is that they want to really co-create and step into the highest embodiment of the being that they can be, you know? And the waking up to that, not only to that, but for many of us, the privileges that we were afforded to be able even to make those choices.
Totally.
Right? To take those steps. You know, I'm standing on the shoulders of many to be able to be where I am now. 100%. And that's another thing that I really want the circle to be a great participant of in this effort towards, you know, anti-capitalism, is how can it be of service to those who have not had, and you know, privilege is a kind of funny, I've been thinking about this word more and more too recently, because it's not just about, you know, the things that were given to you, but it's about like the things that weren't in front of you, right? Like
Totally.
the obstacles that weren't in front of you.
And like the invisible backpack.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. And really bringing that to the fore, I think, is important when it comes to when you can think about your consumption, when you think about where your dollars are going, when you think about who you're employing, who is able to come into your shop, who you can open it up towards, how you can expand upon it. And yeah, I mean, with any luck, many of us are going to be on that path in the years to come.
Totally. Totally. I guess I want to ask, is there anything about flowers and your floral arts that we haven't covered that is wanting to come through? I mean, I'm sure you could probably talk about them all day.
Gosh, I really could. No. And you know, it's a funny thing too. I definitely know florists, like colleagues of mine, who are just romantically, absolutely consumed by flowers. You know, it's like they will drop anything to be in their company. Like the word is an obsession, but it can be that, certainly. I mean, tulip fever was real for a reason. And when I'm not working with flowers, I don't necessarily have like a background tape running in my mind. Like, what are they doing? How do they look right now? I mean, sometimes, don't get me wrong, but there's definitely some space that I'm able to take. But I suppose oftentimes, the only times I'm not really working explicitly in designing flowers is I'm in my garden, or I'm outside with my animals and whatnot. And they're just I guess they're just like singing to me all along, you know, like it's like the radio is always on or something like that. And like, even if I'm not watching, it's like I'm watching TV when I'm working with the flowers, and they're like all of them my business. But then when I'm away from them, yeah, it's like the tune is always floating around my head. And that's something I really love, right? Like the music of the seasons, how things change and shift. And, you know, the rattle of branches in winter versus the whisper of grasses in the fall, and like what that brings up in you, you know? And yeah, I guess that's what I'm always trying to bring forward in my work for other people, right? Is that recall, like, this is where you belong. This is where you're meant to be. You deserve to be in beauty. You deserve to have space. You deserve to be in trust. Because the earth, all she wants to do is give that to us, you know, and like we just have a really hard time hearing her more often than not. But that doesn't mean that we can't, like turn the volume up whenever possible. And flowers help us do that, definitely. I think that was a bit of a ramble, but yeah, that feels right when it comes to flowers for me.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, what do you offer and where can people find you?
Yeah, thank you for that. Here's Jupiter bringing us
the old guitar strap.
Did you just hit your head on the chair? I heard you go bonk. You went bonk, huh?
This sweet pupper.
Honey,
Oh
you
my
went
gosh.
bonk. So sensitive. He was like, I hit my head.
He's so tough and then he's so sensy.
So I'm very much still in the flower world. We have Earth and Floral, which is the website where you can take a look at my portfolio for weddings and events. We also do art direction and styling for interiors and spaces. And Earthen Circle is our terra firma for our flower work and our kind of more witch woo leanings, where we get to support all of the makers and teachers and artists and healers that I've been enormous fans of over the years. Now we get to actually have their products and literature in the space and share them with others. It's definitely something that I'm super passionate about, being able to share that knowledge and accessibility. And with any luck, we'll get to start having events here in the future and more opportunities for people to come into the space and enjoy it. So definitely there are flowers there, 100%. But there's also tinctures and elixirs and natural skincare and beautiful beeswax tapers and pendulums and tarot decks. And then the Depths Tarot is my other creative project that's coming to fore. Finally, it's been a 3-year process. It's such a funny thing. It's looking like the timing will align. The project was started the solstice of 2018, and it's really looking like it's going to be, the launch will be the solstice of 2021. So it's been 3 years, and it's going to like literally be on the date. And it's the work of my creative partner, Annabelle Ray, and I. She is a painter and fine artist, and with me being a writer and a student of the tarot for many years. So we've had this excellent co-creative relationship where we've created this deck that's non-binary, all-inclusive for just more than human beings. And we can't wait to share it with everybody. I sometimes joke that I built Youth in Circle to be a space for the deck to live. And it's not true.
A temple.
Yeah, and so it's going to be super rad to be able to have people come into the space and, you know, work with their cards together and, yeah, dive into that. We all need that guidance in whatever form. And I might be biased, but I think this deck is really fucking beautiful. And it's going to be of great service for actually this coming Sunday, which for those who are listening in the future times would be April 18th of 2021.
Correct.
Yeah. What year? What month is it? What day
It's
is
April,
it?
yeah.
It's April.
Sunday
Okay.
will be April 18th.
But I was like, what is time for the
Who
9
are
millionth
we?
time? We are filming the movement component of the deck. A dear friend of mine is the principal ballerina for the SF Corps, and she's choreographed movements to be able to put the body into the energy of the major arcana. So for instance, when you pull the High Priestess card, there's going to be choreography that goes with it, so then you can really move your body and get into space with it. And I think it's going to be such a rad part of the deck, because yes, of course, it's important for us to be able to connect on this, you know, crown chakra, higher realms, but we also need to be like in the body to work it out here on planet Earth. So yeah, look out for Depths Tarot in June 2021.
Love it.
Yeah.
People can find you on Instagram, on your websites.
Yes, I'm on Instagram for all of those different aspects. I'm at @_, for primarily flower work, and you'll see a lot of me like dancing around the studio with my dog. There's plenty of that. And then we are at @_circle for the shop. And then Depths Tarot is just Depths Tarot. Websites are somewhat similar to those handles. And then, and then I'm also Katie Chirgotis, all one word, on Spotify, because I'm always putting together playlists, and I'm really happy to share them with people. Yeah. It's cool to share music. Man, I can't wait to go to live shows again when all this is said and done.
What are those?
What are those? Yeah, music is such an important aspect to me in being able to make art, for sure. Just to increase like kineticism and emotion. And I mean, I feel like that's as memory evoking as the work that I do with flowers when it comes to smell and texture and color. You know, they all really, they play together in the same sandbox quite well. Yeah. So yeah, those are all the places, I think.
Cool.
Yeah.
And they'll be in the show notes, of course.
They'll be in the show notes.
As always. Thank you for being our guest and allowing me into these spaces and to ask you questions about unicorns and
thank you.
all kinds of fun stuff. It's been amazing. So thank you.
Thank you for coming and connecting and spending the time and affording the space. You know, I know that's quite precious, and thank you for managing, all the different. It's awesome to be outside and to be able to hear everything that's going around us, you know, like the crows that are wheeling and playing and diving, and the chickens, and my dog being a major dog. So yes, thank you for taking the time and the space. And it's been so fun to be a part of this particular aspect, this visual aspect. Thanks for taking a chance on me, I guess I should say.
Thanks for letting me take a chance.
Yeah, totally. Experimentation is crucial within our work, you know, to be able to expand and evolve.
I believe
here to support each other within that space, you know?
I'm grateful.
Grateful for you. Thank you.
Thank you.
All the roads are windy.
Listen to over 200 free Earthspeak podcast episodes on your favorite podcast app and visit earthspeak.love to learn about our collective community and